because it says, but did the people of Israel really understand? Yes.
Oh, no, that's not right.
Huh.
No.
Well, here's what MacArthur says. He goes, Israel was ignorant of the salvation truth contained in their own scriptures,
Yes,
including that the gospel would reach the Gentiles,
That's right.
as promised in Deuteronomy 32:21
That's right.
and Isaiah 65:12. And then he said, yeah, that was it. Just
Well,
they
they
were
did-
ignorant of it. They didn't understand it.
They
Surely
did
Israel
know
did
the-
not know.
They did know the Gentile addition, I guess. But that the gospel itself, they did get, didn't they?
They didn't understand it.
The gospel about
It
the
was
common
given to them,
people.
they didn't grasp it. obviously. They didn't grasp it. They heard it, but they didn't recognize it.
It was preached, but they just didn't understand it.
That's
Because if
right.
they, I mean, it's like not even a little bit of them understood it. Because if, I mean, I guess I look at it this way, that if they had truly understand it, wow. If they had truly understood it and then just rejected it, more of them would have grasped it and followed it. But none of them did. I mean,
Except
hardly
for Paul,
any of them.
the Jews.
Yeah.
Paul
I
is
mean, you're
exception.
just, yeah, Paul is the exception. You're just looking at the sheer numbers. They obviously didn't get it because none of them
Tiny,
believed it.
tiny.
I mean, it's such a small percentage actually got it, believed it, and went with it. So they didn't get it. They really
As a
didn't.
group, they
understand.
didn't.
Yeah, as a group, they just didn't.
No, we have to
understand.
think of the grasp of totality in Hebrew thinking. As a whole, they didn't go, oh, what about this verse? Well, we know they're accepted. We know there's a remnant. We know the New Testament were Jews. They were Jewish people. They did get it. But by and large, taken as a whole, the Jews rejected Jesus. That's clear. That was a tragedy. So God said, okay, I'm not going to go to the African American people, the Brits and the Danes and the rest of them, and their Christianity is going to be such a shining light that will make the Jews jealous of us, and they'll come looking for what we have. That hasn't actually worked out so well yet. Maybe
That
it
part
will.
of the plan is not worked out yet.
Not yet. Maybe it will. Maybe it will.
Because
This
it
is what bothered me.
well, the context here to me is that the context is of the Gentile addition, of the Gentile grafting. They did not get, because that comes with clearly with Paul the Apostle.
Of course.
But that the gospel itself, I mean, the way the gospel about the kingdom, they did get, but they didn't get the fact that the context here is about the Gentile grafting into it. They didn't get.
They didn't get it. Didn't get the Christ was
They didn't even get
Messiah.
the gospel about the coming
They didn't
kingdom.
understand it. No, because Messiah was the one who preached it, and they're supposed to believe Messiah, they didn't believe that, and all the additional stuff they didn't get either. The whole thing was a failure. Until the Gentiles are supposed to come along and make them jealous. That's the general idea. Yeah. Yeah, in fact,
So
John's
basically,
Gospel...
the Jews thought they were so smart and
Yes,
had it all
yes.
together.
Well, you remember in John's Gospel ends on a very dismal note at the end of the ministry of Jesus. It's a very down story. For all of that preaching, they didn't understand. Let's just read that convincingly. John chapter 12. Yeah. As a summary of the story of what Jesus tried to do with them, it didn't work too well. So, here it is. Aha. 12, John 12, verse 36. He said this, while you have the light, this is a message to us, believe in the light, so that you may become sons of light. That's a message for us. These things Jesus spoke, and then he went away and hid himself. Though he performed so many miracles, signs before them, they still weren't believing in him. I mean, what more can you do? Raise the dead? They still didn't get it.
They didn't believe he was the Messiah.
Exactly, that's not getting it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big thing.
Exactly. Exactly not getting it. You said
That's
it
the
right.
whole point.
That's the whole point. They didn't get it. They didn't think he was
Yeah.
Messiah. That's the same thing precisely. They didn't get he was Messiah. This was to fulfill the word of Isaiah, the prophet, which said this. Hey, it's the very same quote we just had in Romans. I hadn't seen that. By chance, it's the very same quote that Paul's just used, as we read in Romans 10. Lord, who are the ones who believe what we say? To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For this reason they could not believe, for Isaiah said, God has blinded their eyes, hardened their heart. They would not see with their eyes, perceive. This is the parable of the sower, same thing. It wasn't God's fault. God blinded them because they blinded themselves. It's always a two-way stream. These things Isaiah said because he saw the Messiah's glory and so on. Nevertheless, many even, look at this 42, many even of the rulers did believe in Jesus. Watch this.
Yeah.
They did, they got it.
It's really good, verse 43.
Isn't that great? 43 is great. But they were not confessing him for fear that they would get kicked out of the church. Oh, how true that is today. For they loved the approval of men. They wanted to be seen in their fine dresses, in the right place. They loved the approval of men rather than the approval of God. Well, interesting we turn there, because it's the same language entirely as Romans 10.
My point, once again, I'm trying to make is that I thought the gospel message about the coming kingdom, right, which is a pretty simple, we always say it's a simple, the gospel is simple. I thought the Israelites as a whole understood that God one day would, what the New Testament writers are expounding here in terms of they're not understanding this, is, well, in this passage, is the person of the Messiah.
Okay, good.
And in the Romans passage, it's the fact that the Gentiles were going to be grafted in.
Well, we know they're going to be grafted in.
No,
But here's the thing, they didn't believe, how can you believe in a kingdom without the king?
It doesn't work.
I mean, you're saying they believed in a kingdom,
That's
but
fine.
they didn't believe in the king.
It's never.
And you can't have, okay, so you
They're not
can't,
accepting.
right, you're not accepting the king,
Therefore,
so
they didn't
how
accept the
therefore.
kingdom. See, the kingdom of Christ.
And their idea of the kingdom was also different than what, well, exactly, more political, it was more like just this, they were gonna, be in charge of everything. But without their king. So they can't possibly have believed in the kingdom message without the
You can't
king.
believe in the kingdom
And their
properly
version of
without
a king.
Christ. As
Right.
of the coming of
And the
Christ.
kingdom was explained more in the New Testament, so what they had wasn't,
But this is the revelation, right? Coming in with the New Testament. The person of Messiah.
Yeah.
And the Gentile things. So they're like adding things to the gospel. But what I'm saying is originally as the gospel was being preached in the Hebrew scriptures, they got that.
Yes, doesn't mean the slide is good, unfortunately. Unless you accept the Messiah
No, we know.
when he comes,
We know.
it's the same as saying they didn't get the kingdom. If they didn't get Messiah, forget it. The
So
kingdom is no good to them.
whatever they get in the Hebrew scriptures in terms of the gospel
Yeah.
about the kingdom,
It's useless.
they
without
lose the
Messiah.
whole deal once they reject the Messiah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
well,
Exactly.
here's another way of looking at
Yes,
it.
that's
People
right.
go around and say, well, I believe in God.
Yes.
I believe in, and let's say it's our version of God, our
Mhm.
Christian God.
Mhm.
But Jesus is God.
Mhm.
Okay, they don't get it.
That's right.
They don't, I mean, they're still out. They're cut off. I mean, if they die with that belief and that they refuse to accept Jesus as God's son, well, I won't judge that. I'm not judging. God says it. It's not my words. But he's the same. So it's the same thing today as somebody saying, well, I believe in the Christian God and Jesus Christ is God. Well, you could, no.
One
It's the
cancels
same,
out the other.
right, one cancels out the other. You can't have it both ways.
No, I don't think that's the problem. Let's finish this chapter. It's actually rather fascinating. I did, by chance, turn to John 12 rather, because the same language exactly, some of the same quotes were used in Romans 10 here. Isaiah is very bold and says, I was found by those who did not seek me. That would be essentially Gentile people who were not on the search for God. The Jews were supposed to be on the search for God. The Gentiles by and large were not. And yet God found them and they found God. I became manifest to those who did not ask for me. It should have been the Jews, and it was the Jews in the New Testament who led the pack. Isn't that right? We know Jesus was a Jew. We know all the New Testament writers, Barney and Luke, were Jews. The church was very Jewish. They did well, that little remnant of Jews. But by and large, the nation did not accept it. If you don't accept the Christ, you're not accepting the kingdom. The kingdom is perfectly useless to you without Christ. Something like that. Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? Makes his point there. I became manifest to those, hopefully we're in this category, then those, I don't understand every detail of this clearly, but we, as children, we were not brought up with the idea that life is about searching the gospel. We thought we had it, kind of.
Anthony, is it the same principle with those who want to Judaize.
Judaize.
Judaize the Gentiles.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do it, you lose the whole deal as well.
Well,
Is that
obviously.
the same principle?
Yes, of course. And any error is dangerous because it takes you away from Christ. When the Judaizers in Galatians said, you need to be circumcised and keep all those
So they're
laws,
losing the gospel.
they're losing the gospel. That's Paul's impassioned
Even though
plea.
they got the person,
Right?
they got the kingdom,
Ah.
but they're messing up the graft.
That's
They're
right.
trying to follow the
They're
law,
losing the
which is
person.
no longer.
That's right. They're doing Moses
More,
rather
but
than
that's
Christ.
goodness
And Paul is saying Christ has come, so actually they're losing Christ, you see.
Yeah,
That's
because
what-
the whole point
Yes.
is
It's
Christ.
Christ.
And then you take that out, guess what?
It's very clever.
Right back where you started.
Well,
Cleverly done.
it's very
Mhm.
condemning. It's very,
Well, there's therefore no condemnation.
well, yeah, it's very tough. It's very tough to go around evangelizing.
From the in-group, that's right.
Romans.
Yeah. Anyway,
Randy says to the Jews, a dead Messiah is no Messiah. They didn't believe he had
Yeah,
risen. He
that's
just
right.
didn't fit what they were looking for.
that's right. That's right, that's exactly right. And we read it clearly
He didn't
in,
bring the kingdom.
in John 12 there. As a nation, they didn't accept him. Then, in parentheses, by the way, some of them did accept him, but they didn't confess him. That's interesting, because Paul says you have to confess.
Mm.
So, what good is it understanding the truth of the gospel if you're not willing to confess it? That doesn't do you any good either.
And it's not only that he dies for this person who just said that. What's her name?
Randy.
Randy.
Oh,
Yeah.
his name, right? That's very good because it's not only that he does not bring the kingdom, he's killed.
Yes.
But he's killed in a way that the Jews interpret as, oh,
Sure.
this guy was
Yes.
obviously a false guy because
Yes.
he's hanging on a wood, a tree.
Yes.
And our scriptures say this about this,
Yeah.
and this guy's clearly a
Double
false.
whammy. Made it hard.
Yeah.
Now let's finish with 21. Is God then pleased with Israel under the present conditions? Apparently not. As for Israel, this is in answer to the fact that some might say, well, God ordained all this, he blinded them anyway, so why is he finding fault with them? No, you can't do that either. It's in response to their blindness that they got blinder. As for Israel, God says, all day long I've been begging them, stretch out my hands to a disobedient and obstinate people. They will not listen. And that was Jesus' experience too, was it not?
Did you say they have blinders?
They have blinders on, yeah. Paul is challenging, isn't he? Makes us really, really think. I think the substance of what he says here is rather clear, don't you? It's sort of irrevocable logic marches on to its end point. Next week then, God willing, the 11th chapter is the resolution of all this. How does the story come out? 9, 10 and 11, we've done 9 and 10. When we get to 11, we're going to see there is a bright future for a remnant of what we now call national, natural Israel. Currently blinded, the ones that God is begging them to come and they're not doing it. He's going to find a way of waking them up, and that's not a very nice solution. He's going to have to whack them so hard that they say, and I sometimes wonder about some of our friends who are very careless with the truth right now. They're not in here studying their Bibles. Watch out. Maybe they have to be. I wouldn't want it that way. I prefer them to come kindly and sweetly and gently now. But we've all been whacked, have we not? Anybody feel they've not been whacked? I feel we have. We were whacked almost into insensibility by our stupidity. We have emerged so far still
So
standing.
there are many parts to this gospel thing that we need to get exactly right.
We're trying hard. So what do you think? That's an interesting ending. Stretch out my hands to a disobedient and obstinate people.
What scripture is that?
That was the very last verse.
The
No, I mean,
last
what's he's quoting from, is that Isaiah 65 too?
Yes, Isaiah 65 verse 2.
And
Let's
it
go back
continues
and
to this day.
finish that.
God
by reading
is
it.
still extending.
Exactly.
I mean, again, they accuse us of, because we're not for Israel.
Right?
Oh, you're saying that, no,
So this
God
is
is still.
a quote from God, but now Paul's.
I'm sorry, I say
Quoting
it again,
it.
I said it once before that, we're more Jewish than most Jews. I mean,
Yes.
The new Jew,
yeah, I mean, really,
the Christian.
And we all know that the Jews have a reputation for being arrogant. What a brilliant way God has done this, that he's going to humble them by having them get this
Yes.
from the Gentiles that they regard as dogs.
That's right.
It's beautiful.
It's a nice
really.
paradox, isn't it? That's it.
And brilliant too.
Let's read the text in Isaiah where he's quoting 65:1. I permitted myself, 65:1, God speaking, I permitted myself to be sought by those who did not ask me. So the Gentiles got in on the truth. I permitted myself to be found, he means Gentiles here, by those who were not, as a nation, that wasn't the thing that they did, was to seek for God necessarily. No doubt, there were, you can always say, well, there were individuals who did, but by and large, the principle is clear. The principle is clear. I said, here I am. I'm right here. To a nation which did not call on my name. That's rather remarkable. That's a remarkable paradox, that he was found by unseeking Gentiles. I've spread out my hands all day long to my own rebellious people, the Jews, what we call the Jews, who walk in a way which is not good, following their own thoughts. The people continually provoke me to face and so on to my face, offering sacrifices in gardens, burning incense to bricks, eating swine's flesh, which they should not have been doing under the law of Moses, of course. Broth of unclean meat is in their pots. And these people in verse 5 keep saying, hey, stay away, God. Don't you come near me. I'm holier than thou. You can think of some of your friends. They're not interested in seeking God. They ought to for their own safety. It's very dangerous not to be seeking God. Stay away, God. I'm holier than you. These are smoke in my nostrils. I can't stand this. A fire that burns all the day. Behold, it's written before me, I will not keep silent, but I will repay it. You wait till God, I think of this morning, I thought this morning. You wait till God goes into action. You ain't seen nothing yet, because I don't know how he puts up with this mess. How he puts up with people talking about marriage equality. And people writing these articles as though the Bible had never been heard of. They never opened the Leviticus. I have to say this to you. Leviticus 18, it says that same-sex stuff is exactly the same as bestiality. No different. Now I'm going to get shocked for that. You want to have sex with your mother-in-law? Go for it. Do we believe in that? You want to have sex man to man? Woman? It's the same thing. Read it in Leviticus 18. It's a very great point. It was made by a chap on YouTube this week. It says you can't just pull out one and make that sanction that. Incest is no better. That's the way God thinks of it. But who cares about God, for goodness sake? Obama has evolved.
He used to.
It shows where Jesus or his apostles overturns Leviticus. Things like Leviticus 18.
So incest is
where
fine.
does Jesus say, hey, you know what, that thing about bestiality?
Because you're supposed to love your enemy, you're supposed to love everyone.
You're supposed to use your common sense.
That's
Jesus.
what Jesus Christ preaches, you just love everyone.
But you know, the sexual immorality of this generation, it started with, the sexual purity in marriage, right? So there used to be a very strong drive in that. So that, just fell, eroded.
60s,
But
birth control
right,
pill.
60s.
Pretty much ended that.
Next thing, homosexuality. So at some point, that's going to normalize. Who knows what's going to be next?
Exactly.
And,
Well,
these
no.
things that
Apparently
we're saying,
sex with animals.
right, exactly.
You can
So
see it on the horizon.
I just, it's sad to think about the degradation of, the morality of people when it comes to the.
Someone actually made a great point. They said, well, what's next? Incest? Because why can't a same-sex relative, why can't a relative marry a same-sex relative?
Right.
That's not incest, because incest is illegal mostly because of the health reasons. Supposedly.
Oh, no, it's not supposed, it's real.
But if you have a same-sex union of relatives, isn't that fine? Why can't they have their equal? So we can see it, TJ, on the horizon. It's a
I don't want to think there, but,
We don't need to know that. Marriage equality is the term that will cover all sins.
Listen, I
Marriage
got a
equality.
16-year-old boy, that's enough.
The word equality. You're
Not
right.
that. Okay, so we haven't paid attention to our audience very much today.
No, I'll
Sorry
just
about
tell
that.
you some of the things.
The system-
To deny Jesus equally as dangerous as, this is the question, I'm sorry. Is to deny Jesus equally as dangerous as mistaking him as someone else?
Yes.
I think so, yes, of course. There's always the sliding scale. How much could you reasonably know? We know that God works on a sliding scale. But once you are exposed to truth, you're supposed to accept it. God is the only one who can judge the heart of an individual, is that right? Who really cannot see this, it's not his own fault. All I know is that you're supposed to accept the truth as it comes to you. If you don't, then you're on the line.
Well, you always quote Anthony, the Gospel of John, Jesus says, because you claim to hear and see,
Yeah.
the sin remains in you.
Sliding scale, 15:22 of John. If I hadn't come and told them the truth, they wouldn't be at least as guilty. They wouldn't be guilty maybe at all. So there is that sliding scale. But honestly, there's no excuse for not understanding God is one. That's very easy. So.
Or back in those days when you were exposed to Jesus himself and miracles.
Surely. Particularly
Kind
then.
of no excuse to
Right.
not,
Yeah.
not
Particularly
believe
that
that.
generation.
Yeah. I think that's what we were talking about at the time.
Sure.
Okay, but let's see, these are all the latest things, and then I'll go back to earlier things. But they mocked him, King of the Jews. They refused to accept his messiahship. What is frightening is the desensitization to this happening with little kids.
Oh, yes.
They're going to see this as normal.
That's horrible.
And as far as what we were just
Horrible.
talking about.
Yes.
And even pedophiles argue that that's normal.
Yeah.
And let me go up to some things from earlier. I didn't have a million comments, but let's see.
How many people are out there?
Prince of this world must be a great message. The prince of the world doesn't want us. Oh, I'm sorry. That's when the thing was out. Carl or Joanna made a comment earlier. Let me find it. Carl, it's either Carl or Joanna. I don't know because it's just architect. I'm not sure. Someone asked me recently to describe why I believe that Jesus is not God, or more precisely to describe how I differentiate between Jesus and God. And then without quoting any scripture, I explained that Jesus was the mortal sacrifice for my sins, and if he were immortal like God, it wouldn't be much of a sacrifice.
It wouldn't be a sacrifice at all, because you can't die when you're immortal.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
going to put a finer point on that, right? Yes.
And he said, I think they're reading scripture more closely now.
Surely. That's wonderful. Excellent. They did very well with that person. Made them think.
Before that, when we were talking about, let's see, some Old Testament texts are even applied to Paul somewhere. I don't remember.
Yes. Acts 13, Paul sees himself as the suffering servant. In Acts 13,
Oh, okay.
he quotes the suffering servant, Isaiah 53 text, of himself. He's part of that suffering
Okay.
servant team.
Okay.
Great text.
And then Psalm 110:1, the confession of Jesus as Lord
Yes.
encompasses the kingdom.
Yes.
Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your
That's
footstool. Yahweh says,
It's getting
"My
the Lord thing right. Jesus is Lord means he's the Adonai of Psalm 110:1, not Jesus Yahweh. That makes two Yahwehs, and we shrink from that.
And we were talking about that with the Lord, and it was Jesus acts as God's agent, as a source of salvation.
Absolutely. Must be
We
right.
all understand that
If you've seen me, you've
concept
seen
of
God.
agency.
Heard me, you've heard God, he said.
And then there's a question on here that I'll ask, but I don't know that it had a lot to do with what we were talking about. It says, why are some more interested in what we do not have to do instead of earnestly trying to make sure we do
That's a good
everything
point.
we should?
It's a good point. It's a good point. We shouldn't just be negative and say we're not bound by Sabbath keeping, holy days, and all that, but we should make sure that we're concentrating on things that we do have to do to be obedient. It's a good balance, absolutely.
And Dan to that says, I think it is because we can waste a lot of time, effort, observing laws and rules that are not necessary any longer.
That's
Certainly
exactly
spent
right.
a lot of time on that.
We did spend an awful lot of time. It wore us out, it wore us down trying to keep all those laws, and now we're free of that. Yeah, great to hear from you, Dan.
Particularly the
And
613 Kodash Mitzvah.
Kodesh Mitzvah, holy commandment is that. That
Okay,
is,
fine.
yes.
Yeah, the Acts 13:39, by the one got raised.
Yes.
If you believe in that one, everything from which the law of Moses could not justify you, you are now justified.
Of course.
Very
Right.
strong.
Well, very strong.
That's very
Big comment.
13:39 Acts.
Yes, one. We all want to be justified. We want to be vindicated. We want to be right rather than wrong. That's what we said.
And I think I missed a little chunk here in the middle.
Yeah.
I think this is when we were talking about the nation of Gentiles.
Yes, yes.
Um,
First Peter 2:5.
People are fearful of challenging their thinking. We are taught that that is to fall away from the truth. If we start challenging what we think.
It's not easy to rethink.
The Jews rejected, and now Orthodox Christianity keep them away.
Yes. And as they know, there are rabbis out there working to prevent evangelicals turning Jews into Trinitarians. Rabbi Tovia Singer, that's his whole mission.
And you can't blame them.
No.
I mean, just,
You go, Rabbi.
That's his whole mission. Us as a nation are supposed to be to 2:5. Anyone needs that in the notes, look up. I was going to do that next week. 1 Peter 2:5 says you're a holy nation. You're kings and priests. That's Jewish stuff.
applied to the Gentile nation
That's
of
right,
that
because
is
you are
now
the true
Christian.
Jews now.
The Christian,
Yes.
former Gentile.
That's supposed to drive the Jews mad. They get terribly jealous.
How would the Jews be jealous of a people with multiple gods
I
which
know.
deny the Shema?
Good point. That's a great point. I love that. Indeed, I understand.
Randy.
Point taken.
Good point.
Good point.
And then he says, maybe not at the time of Paul's writing,
Right.
but as it is now.
Good point.
Okay.
Appreciate everybody out there. It's so
I
good
think I've covered
to
everything.
have your
Let me see if
interaction
they
with
have-
us.
You know, this
Yep.
chapter, it's interesting, you had both verses in the same chapter needing to be balanced.
Yes.
But one gets all the press, the one about if you call on the name of the Lord and
Yeah.
believe in your heart.
Yeah.
But if that stands alone, what on earth is he railing against misdirected zeal
Yes.
for?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly right.
Right, doing all the do's and don'ts. I went to a Billy Graham crusade one time, and I mean, all these people, you know, there was the altar call, and all these people down, they just said, you know, I confess Jesus, or Jesus is Lord, or whatever they,
Yeah.
it was just a sentence, and then suddenly that's supposed to be it.
That's it.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, they do have people that after you go down on the field or whatever,
Will
and make your
counsel
big
you after.
confession, then you go over to find out, what do I do now, you know? But I don't think Acts 8:12 was quoted too.
It certainly was not, but you raise a very interesting point. The stats seem to show, I read this somewhere, that only 10% of those people who went forward even
yeah,
belonged to a
yeah,
church
yeah,
10 years
yeah.
later.
Right.
They were nothing.
Right.
It didn't work. For 90% of them, it didn't work. Also, other point was that some of that going forward is orchestrated. I've read that. I think probably truthfully. They have people in the crowd who sort of lead the way forward to get them all hyped up.
Well, probably.
But on top of all
Well,
that, they haven't been,
It's not good. You know?
they haven't been preached the Trinity
I
in
know.
that going
I know.
forward, so
Yeah,
they
good
don't
point.
believe it.
I know.
So according to orthodoxy, they are nuts.
It's a bit garbled, isn't it, at that point? Yeah, God will have to work this out.
Oh,
I
Think
see.
about that.
John calls it,
That's right.
Romans 10:9,
Mhm.
it would be a sit-around text. He's asking, would that be a sit-around text? And I'm like, what does he mean
What does
by
that mean?
that?
What do you mean
Then
by
he says,
that?
by just believing and then doing nothing.
Right.
So,
Sitting around
it's a
doing
couch
nothing.
potato
Yes.
text. Just sit around, do nothing.
Yeah.
Many will say, Lord, Lord,
Yes.
dot, dot, dot.
These are very telling verses. Obedience of faith. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and you will not do the things that I say, like believe in the kingdom or believe in the one God? It's tough.
Or believe the Gentiles are right.
Yeah.
Well, and live a Christian life, live a godly,
Live the godly life,
live a
right.
godly life of a
According to
redeemed
the
people.
Sermon on the Mount.
Sure. That's right. Okay.
And which is not, as the world says, that we should never judge, but we're supposed to make righteous judgments. And
Judge with right judgment. John 5.
Okay, we'll see you guys next week, God willing. We'll be in Tennessee at Christian Workers Seminar this week coming.
well, maybe we'll sing a closing hymn
Got a
now.
closing hymn for us, Michelle?
How about page 31, To God Be the Glory? If anybody wants to look it up.
Okay.
To God Be the Glory. And I think it's 3 verses, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Good.
Oops. Where did our songbooks?
31, was it?
Okay. Excellent lesson, we have been told, and we have been told that somebody loves us.
Oh, come on.
That's
no.
great.
We love somebody.
We love somebody.
Well, that was from John, 1 John says,
First John.
I love you all, that's what he's called, I don't know, John somebody. I love you all, God bless. Dan Shaw says, excellent lesson today. Beth, Beth says, thanks again. Ramon says, thank you all, have a blessed week. Randy says thanks for all your sharing.
Thank you for being out there. It encourages us a great deal to know that you're there.
There were
Your time.
7, at one point there were 18, 17 or 18.
We lost a few people when it.
It blinked out and locked up for a little while, but
Two or three.
what page did I say this
I
on?
said 31, I believe.
31.
We've all seen.
Okay, so it's 15.
Baseline from Matthew.
I do, I understand.
Bring it out for us.
I get it, I was.
You've been heard all over the world now.
All over the world.
Everyone in Denmark is listening. No, Holland. I wish I could sleep.
To God be the glory. Good tune.
31.
Is that right?
Yeah.
God be the glory, great things He hath done. So loved He the world that He gave us His Son, who yielded His life an atonement for sin, and opened the wide gate that all may go in. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Let the earth hear His voice. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Let the people rejoice. Oh, come to the Father through Jesus the Son, and give Him the glory. Great things He hath done. Oh, perfect redemption, the purchase of blood, and every believer, the promise of God, the marvelous offender who truly believes, that moment from Jesus the pardon receives. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, let the earth hear His voice. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, let the people rejoice. Oh, come to the Father through Jesus the Son, and give Him the glory. Great things He hath done. Great things He hath taught us, great things He hath done, and great our rejoicing through Jesus the Son. But purer and higher and greater will be our wonder, our transport when Jesus we see. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, let the earth hear His voice. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, let the people rejoice. Oh, come to the Father through Jesus the Son, and give Him the glory. Great things He hath done. I'm just going to finish with prayer myself. We have a prayer request from out there that I know about. Father in heaven, thank you for this time together, especially for those who are diligent in their studies of the Bible, to be joining us on a Sunday, to share in the words of Paul. We praise you for each one of them, ask you to bless each one in the week that comes, and from there on out. We pray for the Crease family, and ask you to bless them in every possible way. Strengthen them for the trials that are with them at the present time. Bless them and bring them safely into your kingdom when that kingdom arrives. We thank you for our time together. We ask for protection on the roads, for the Christian Workers Seminar upcoming, for all those who attend. May the words that we have learned today sink deep into our hearts, and we can live them out during the week. They would make a definite impression upon who we are as people. This prayer now we're offering with thanksgiving to the Messiah Jesus and to you as the one and only God that exists. The prayer is offered in Messiah's name. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, Brian, am I all set to be able to attend?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good.